Hello, hola everyone, and welcome. Thanks for tuning in to our second session of Growing Pains, a series of quick firesides with leaders all around Asia, sharing their nuggets, their stories, and learnings on developing people managers in meaningful hypergrowth companies. The goal of these sessions is to give you bite-sized perspectives and real-life insights so that you can make an impact tomorrow with your company. Our guest today is Momo Estrella, the digital design lead at IKEA China, as well as a long-term friend. Momo, we are here today to learn about your experience building and leading a team through change. Let's start with who you are and what has been some of your most meaningful projects that have changed an organization today.
Hey, Will, thank you for having me. Hi, NewCampus. Always a pleasure to be in these sessions. Always feel a lot of pressure, because I'm a big fan of everything you guys are doing, and it's an honor to be here today having this conversation. My name is Momo. I'm based in Shanghai, in China. Me and my team are looking after the digital design of basically the digital experience across all our digital channels and our physical stores. And what that means is that we need to constantly work with a variety of teams that are building, an omni-channel experience. And it's been a great year and a half, but it's also been slightly painful because it's a transformation process, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And I guess maybe to get started there, I think to me, I believe for companies to continuously deliver value, to stay competitive and to address big challenges. As a company, you basically need to continuously evaluate and redefine how are you meeting, the needs of your customers. So to me, transformation is about that. Transformation is about adopting behaviors, processes, or technologies, to reevaluate and redefine this relationship you have with your customers. And when you do that right, the beauty of it is that you can change how you think, how you operate, and basically how you deliver value as a company. And in the past, I've been part of a few transformation journeys. Probably the most significant one where I spent quite a lot of time was at EF Education First. And this happened basically when our online business and our brick and mortar schools needed to basically play together. So, internally, the idea of a student walking into the classroom, into the physical classroom, and, maybe taking homework to complete online, or being able to go into group classes, either one-to-one with a teacher in a group setting, it was pretty straightforward, and nobody was against that in the company until we realized that there was a lot of organizational change that needed to happen. Our company basically wasn't ready for a lot of these things. Our pricing needed revision, our classrooms needed to be redesigned, new partnerships needed to be established, new digital products needed to be built. And we weren't ready for any of that. Our pricing, for example, had very precise formulas on how it was calculated, and that did not necessarily take into account either digital learning or sales attribution to physical schools that would sell online classes and things like that. So our classrooms were more like physical proxies to real teachers, but the core offering was online now. So our partnership with new technology providers had a clear architecture or data integration or product strategy. So even though we had a clear idea of what we wanted to achieve as an outcome, it was a very long and painful process. So eventually we went through that, and I guess that's a little bit of what we're going to unpack today. I guess the second transformation I'm going through right now is with IKEA, trying to advance IKEA into an omni-channel organization and a sustainable omni-channel business model in a way. Mm-hmm. So as I said, my job is basically to try and create new ways to market, new ways to sell, and new ways to serve customers in a more modern way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for sharing that moment. You've obviously seen, a spectrum of change in different industries, from your early days in EF to going to IDEO to now at IKEA, mm-hmm. From a global perspective as well. Right. When you think about the mindset of your team, being able to think more, creatively, being more agile and adaptable when, everything from product to working with clients to really thinking through, new ways of doing things. How do you sort of, think about preparing your team to be shifting their mindset in this way?
Right. So one of the most, obvious pains of transformation is the ambiguity that comes with it. And navigating this ambiguity is very hard. Like in my career, I've seen people quit their jobs over, how ambiguous things can get. And I think those people that I've come to admire and learn from, I think they share two traits in common that I think are very important. One is that they know when to move on, and the second one is they know how to connect different parts of an incomplete picture. So in the first example, so people that know when to move on, very often in transformation, you end up getting into rabbit holes. And sometimes this could be just trying to seek consensus or share to really understand some of the challenges that you have. But one of the key traits, I would say, for navigating this is the ability to just suspend existing beliefs and letting go of things. Having strong opinions, but very loosely held, and being able to move forward. One analogy that came up once in my previous workplace was this idea of color versus movement, which is an improv principle. An example is if you have two improv actors, and one improv actor says, "Oh no, the house is on fire." And then the second actor is like, "Oh, I'm scared." Color. It's just adding more information to the situation, but it's not moving the narrative forward. Movement, on the other way, is when the actor says like, "Oh no, the house is on fire," and the other actor says, "Let's get out of the room." So that pushes the story to continue to move. And the analogy that came back a few years ago was we need to know when to stop adding color to things and when to start moving things. And I guess that's one of the most powerful traits that I would say that will help you eventually to shift mindsets. When it comes to, I guess, building teams with these kind of qualities, there are certain things that I typically try to look for when I'm assembling teams for transformation. I would say a very important aspect is a little bit of stubbornness. People that is a little bit stubborn is actually a good thing, as long as they're excited by change, for example. This is about, finding people that are not afraid of maybe pointing at something that is wrong or incomplete. I call them the gap detectors. These are pretty good, actually, traits to have in a transformation program. And I try, and find evidence of extraordinary accomplishments, maybe when I'm interviewing them, and I try to understand how do they make decisions at pivotal moments of this transformation journey. And I think this gives me a relatively good picture of their ability to navigate the chaos and the ambiguity, back to your original question. So that's, I guess, a little bit of a ball, of an answer that maybe covers what you asked.
Momo, you mentioned that you spend a lot of time assembling the team that can thrive, at the very least, in times of ambiguity. Is this something that you can develop in people?
You can develop certain comfort for ambiguity. You hopefully develop people's ability to resolve problems. I guess the main challenge with ambiguity is that you often don't know where exactly you're trying to get. And maybe this takes me to a different part of the topic that maybe we can explore, which is more around setting a North Star, setting a vision, or setting the right goals. I think, to be honest, ambiguity shows up when you are, I guess, playing out of the track. A transformation, as messy as it can be, it does require guardrails. It does require, I guess, certain boundaries. And ambiguity shows up when you're too close to the boundaries, really, or when you're past them. And I think the best way to manage, I guess, teams that need to navigate this, I would say, ideally, you don't manage the team, but you manage the outcomes that they need to create. You help the team to focus and achieve what they set out to either define, either the quarterly or the yearly goals. And you check in on them, not to know what exactly they're working on, but to try and understand how are the outcomes shaping up. You don't necessarily ask for a list of activities or completed tasks, but you ask for notable movements, towards those goals. In a way, as long as you speak the language of progression, I think ambiguity becomes a little bit less threatening. So progression, I guess, the short version is progression helps you to deal with it, like the feeling that you're actually advancing towards something. Yeah. Another thing that usually helps is to make sure that you secure some visibility for the progress that you're making. And what I mean to say by this is that, transformation journeys can be almost like consulting. It can be a very thankless job. You know what I mean? And thankless for some of the best, leaders maybe and their people. So whenever possible, a little bit of airtime, a little bit of like a bright spotlight is important. A loud microphone, as I say, is very important for people to get that sense of not necessarily recognition, but get that sense of progression once again. How do you make that progress more visible, and how do you surface that?
Momo, you mentioned earlier, the concept around the guardrails and having the North Star.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you're sort of navigating this ambiguity and, moments of change, your team and the organization are focused on point and constantly experimenting. How have you actually applied that recently, especially with what's happening with the pandemic and companies working remotely, changed from synchronous to asynchronous conversations? How have you sort of actually implemented this recently in your company?
Right. So what I would say that COVID may have accelerated our path towards what we set out to do. I think the strategy was not necessarily challenged, but it has changed a little bit of how we work. So, for example, one recent example that comes to mind is we're trying to figure out how to, for example, this is a known fact for retailers that are transitioning to omnichannel, is that omnichannel customers are more productive. What that means is that say their average transactions or the frequency of visitation or their purchases are just commercially more fruitful. So in the short version is that how do we then stimulate omnichannel usage? How do we increase omnichannel usage? It becomes a North Star in a way for everybody. So independently of what channels you're talking about, whether you're talking about channels that market serve or you're talking about digital or physical stores, when everybody shares a North Star on let's do what we have to do, but let's also think about how do we inbound a user and how do we outbound an omnichannel user? What role can each channel play to basically serve or market or sell, but at the same time to generate or to create or to tag a customer and fit them into an omnichannel engine, right? And what that means is, for example, in our case, for example, a store, one of the most important roles that they can play to generate an omnichannel user is to promote downloading of our app, right? Because our app basically is about using technology to bring our stores and our co-workers' expertise, our shopkeepers, right? To bring that expertise towards people and vice versa. So if we manage to capture an offline customer and get this offline customer to download the app when they visit the store, that feeds to that outbound omnichannel usage that we're trying to increase. That's a recent example, I guess, that can be shared at a high level. Yeah.
And how are you keeping your team, consistently on track with motivation and pursuit of achieving that, North Star goals? Because obviously it's not just here's the plan, here's the 12-month strategy, let's go. Yeah. But do you have any triggers or nudges that you look out for?
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. So I think maybe just for context, I feel like elements that are very important to have, when you're about to approach transformation is to have, you need a vision, you need your goals, and you need a structure. And those are sequential. You cannot have one without the previous one. So a vision could be your winning aspiration, for example, if you use Roger Martin's kind of strategy ladder, or it could be a North Star, as you said. Then you set goals. These are basically key milestones or maybe OKRs. And then the third one is you set a structure. And this has to do with what partnerships or what working agreements or what design principles or new rituals or organizational teams or task forces that we need to set. So once you set those, then it's more about, I guess, how do you then understand the change that you are creating? I think not the easiest, but an easier way to keep people motivated is to, I guess, surface the impact that they are having, and how are they affecting the goals. One example is, so say, typically in a transformation journey, you want to have a combination, say, maturity goals for the organization. How do you mature certain aspects of the organization? And then you also want to have these kind of very far distant business outcomes that are currently not possible. So whether you use, say, cumulative goals, say, I don't know, $200 million of online revenue, that's a North Star, maybe. Or whether you use rhythmic goals, acquiring 40,000 new users a month or so. Either of these goals are useful for maintaining the pace and keeping people motivated, but typically the rhythmic goals that you can track every month are the ones that everybody can see and feel slightly more validated, and I guess one caveat there is that one of the hardest thing about transformation is that, say for example, in our case at IKEA, our transition towards omnichannel means that a goal is a goal no matter who scores, right? It's almost like a team sport. So a sale is a sale no matter who sells it. So getting, for example, stores and online channels to play well together, it's easier said than done, because then you realize, for example, maybe some of the store incentives or maybe the organizational structures may not necessarily be in the right place to enable that collaboration, that internal commercial behavior that we need to enable. So I think to me it's about having the right connective tissue, I guess, between all the stakeholders to make sure that everybody then now goes into this together kind of mode. Togetherness being one of our values. Something is the same. That's, I would say, one of the most notable challenges that any company really can face when you're on a transformation journey. Naturally, transformation is a scary thing, and people go into slightly territorial mode. It's like trying to be a bit overprotective over their teams, and that's a great thing, actually. But then what often that causes is these kind of micro networks that are isolated from each other. And that's where you need to, as you said, your North Star, that's when you need to give everybody something in common to know that all of you are kind of trying to achieve the same thing.
Thanks for sharing, Momo. Lastly, obviously your career has been so iterative and so evolving and so global minded. As you kind of move across different companies, different journeys, and your personal growth, what is Momo Estrella's playbook? What would you say are 3 key values that you would be taking across different organizations and different teams?
Right. I love that question. So I think when I'm always obsessed about things that I don't know. I think, to me, not knowing things is an exciting thing. And I think in my case, I try to bring with me always this obsession for creating knowledge. Like, how do we acquire more information, and how do we create a learning system out of it? I feel like creating a culture of being in learning mode is actually a very, very important thing, especially when you're going on a transformation journey. On a transformation journey, you often cannot benchmark against the past because there's no past. So everything is exciting because everything is wide open. So to me, I would say my 3 values are optimism, curiosity, and I could say probably togetherness. I feel like I could never do what I do without having the people that I have around me, above me, and under me. I think it's a network of brilliant people that really inspire me and that help me to do the things that I do. So yeah, those 3 things I would say are what guide me the most. That's a very difficult question to answer, but thank you for asking me.
Yeah, I mean, on that note of togetherness, I'm looking forward to when borders open up again, seeing you in person in Shanghai, or you finding us in Singapore. Momo, thank you so much for your time today. And thanks everyone for tuning in. We're going to be sending a summary of our learnings tonight over email. If you have any more questions or interested in connecting, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn or at hello@NewCampus. Momo, thanks again for your time. Have a great night, and see you soon.
Thank you, Will. See you soon.